What's happening, YouTube? It's Simon466cards, and today we're going to talk about base prism and silver prisms in the Panini era, and especially in the prism era over the last decade or so in the hobby. And specifically, I want to talk about that role that they play in the hobby because I'm not sure that the role that these cards play makes sense. And so let's get into that. What do I mean? When you think about silver prisms or base prisms, they are viewed as the key cards for each player's market. So you can see here, these are screenshots from Card Ladder, and they have for the Luka here, it's a silver prism that is the key card, and it says here it's been selected as the key card and representation of the general market trend for Luka. For Giannis, it's the base because it's 2013, so there's less cards printed. And then for Patrick Mahomes, same thing. Now, I'm going to keep my discussion and analysis here to just basketball and football because I'm focusing on Prizm. But the overall thoughts I have could also apply to other sports. You can see here Young Guns for hockey, Topps and Topps Update, maybe Topps Chrome for baseball, but I am not familiar, or I'm not as familiar with these two markets, so I'm staying away from them in case there are reasons why they might not apply. So I'm going to focus on specifically basketball, football, and Prizm because I'm more familiar with Prizm as a whole. So I'm going to take a step back here. I made this video earlier this year. It talks about how collectors and investors influence the card market differently, and specifically the cards along with their prices differently. And that's what led to the rise during the pandemic because there were increased profits and prices during the pandemic, and obviously people were stuck at home with nothing better to do. So that led to a flood of new investors into the sports cards market, which drove up the price, right? I don't think that's really a shock here, but that's what drove up what we're calling basically the COVID bubble. And new sports card investors, and the key here is investors, all of these new sports card investors to the hobby were told to buy the same thing, by the hobby, by influencers, by social media. And this is not a video to cast any type of dispersion on any of the people that were saying these things, because this was the thinking at the time. And I listened to it, to be totally honest. I was not immune to this. I was coming back to the hobby, and this is what I was told, and so I took it as it was. And why were we told to invest these cards? Well, we were told to invest base and silver because they're the main investment cards, right? And specifically, we were told PSA 10s because they're more liquid, right? But was this the right advice? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So, why did everybody say to buy these PSA 10 base and silver prisms? Well, what you see on the screen here is just a 1 week snapshot of all of the silver prism Luka Doncic PSA 10 sales from November 13th here, November 6th here to November 13th here. So you can see there's roughly 10 sales of the same card over a week's time. That's a lot of sales. That's more than one a day on average, right? And so everybody said to buy these PSA 10 base and silver prisms because it's easy to find comps. It's easy to value. It's easy to figure out what they're worth based on the amount of comps. There should be no debate about what these things are worth. But let's take a step back. Why is it so easy to find comps for these cards? Whether it's the silver Luka, the Mahomes, the base Giannis, this Austin Matthews, Young Guns. Why is it so easy to find comps for these cards? For these investment cards, if that's what you want to call them? It's because the pop counts are quite high. And they are liquid because there's so many of them that they can just, be bought and sold and bought and sold and bought and sold on a weekly or sometimes daily basis, as you just saw, right? And the one that really sticks out to me is the Shohei Ohtani. It's got 11,000 pop count. That's really, really high, right? I think we can all say that with without any discussion, with any debate, that 11,000 is a really high pop count. And so that's why it's so easy to find comps for these investment cards. Just there's tons of them out there. But the only reason why sports cards are valuable is because they're collectibles, right? So what's the definition of an actual collectible? Well, I'm weirdly, I found this on the United States government ethics website for their public financial disclosures. I'm assuming to ensure that public officials don't get paid off. I thought that was strange and weird, but whatever we can do to prevent conflicts of interest. So, but what's more important is the part I have here on the screen. So they define a collectible item as, for purposes of financial disclosure, a collectible item refers to a personal property that is unique, limited in quantity, antique, or holds a special quality or financial value. Examples of such work include art, vintage automobiles, antique furniture, and rare stamps or coins. But the key here is the definition of a collectible item is that it is unique, limited in quantity, i.e. rare, right? So unique and rare. So let's now take a big step backwards and just think through the logic here. And this is what I'm calling the paradox of investment cards like these base prisms and silver prisms. So let's start off with a pretty bland, generic statement that should not be controversial at all. Sports cards, or some sports cards, have value as unique and rare collectibles. I think there's no debate about that, right? Now let's continue on this journey, this logic journey that we're on. People buy cards as an investment due to their value. I think, again, that is not controversial, right? Let's keep going. Investment cards became popular since they are liquid and have many comps, like the base and silver prisms I just talked about. Again, none of this should be controversial. And many comps exist because these investment cards have a high pop count, which I just showed you using those silver and base prism cards from Card Ladder as an example, right? But if a card has a high pop count, it is not a unique and a rare collectible by definition. And so how do you come back to the very beginning statement that I just made about sports cards have value as unique and rare collectibles when these investment cards are not unique or rare? I don't think you complete that full circle. I actually don't think that they're collectibles, these investment cards. And so as a result, I don't think they have a lot of value long term. And so I actually think we're going a different way here. And that's investment cards are unlikely to have long-term value because they're neither unique or rare. And these investment cards are doomed to be poor investments in the long run. And that might be controversial, that might not be, but if you follow this circle of logic here, it doesn't really come back to the main point of why we do this thing that we do, collect cards. It's because it's fun, but it's also because you want to collect the unique stuff, the rare stuff. Not these things that have thousands of comps that you could buy every week. There's nothing special about them. This is the whole reason why we do this. It's because we want to collect things that make us feel special by holding something that's special, right? And so that's where I'm at with these investment cards. Now, as an example, I made this prediction before the NFL season started. I said, these ultra modern QB investment cards, they're going to go down. I said at least 14 of the 16 of them, you're not going to be able to make your money back. And I made that prediction, and this is where we're at. I'm recording this on November the 18th. This is the data as of early November. And you can see on the far right, 14 of the 16 are already well in the red. And so I was right. But I was right even though I know nothing about football, very little. I do not follow football. I have not watched the game this entire year. But based off of the cards that I was using to measure, I knew that these were all cards that people were buying as investments, and they weren't being bought by people that actually wanted to hold the card and collect the card long term. And so if you're an investor, then you're looking to buy it for the short term and then also sell it in the short term. And so simple economics, when a bunch of people try to sell the same thing at the same time in the same market, that means supply goes up, that means prices go down. And that's why I made this prediction. So I actually biased this whole series of videos that I'm making and this prediction in my favor. It had nothing to do with the football players, the quarterbacks, or their skill levels. It had everything to do with the cards I was selecting. And that's why I was able to make this prediction. Just, I can admit that now, but this whole prediction was actually not about any of the football players. And so I'm listening to my own advice. I'm not just saying this. You can see here, this is my auction history on ComC, which is where I had initially sent a bunch of my cards for ease of use, because I'm not from the US, I'm from Canada, and to avoid shipping cards back and forth, I just kept it at a warehouse. I have since found better ways than ComC, but this is what I did at first. And I've been sending these to auction, you could see, for the last couple months here. I'm recording this, like I said, November 18th. I've been sending them to auction slowly over the last 2 months, because these cards that I have, these base Prizm Joel Embiid PSA 10s, Embiid's by far my favorite NBA player, but these cards don't do anything for me, and I also don't think they're good long-term holds to increase in value, so I'm just slowly getting out of them, is the simple way to do it, to explain this. I bought these cards based off of the advice I was given a couple years ago, 3 years ago now, that, you know, these base cards, this is what you got to buy, this is what people want. And I listened, right? I'm not immune to the advice I was given. There's no, again, that's why I'm not casting aspersions. I also listened to this advice and followed it, but I think very differently now than I did in 2020. And so as a result, just selling all of these slowly over time. The one thing I will say, just as a word of advice to you, if you're sending these to auction, don't send them all to auction at once. Because if you flood the market with them, like I just talked about, that means supply goes up, that means price goes down. If you're selling them, you know, multiple versions within a couple of days, or even on the same day. That's why I'm slowly doing a slow leak of these over time. And you can see the prices are slowly starting to go up. I only got 111 here at the bottom, all the way up to 146, because Joel's playing well, Sixers are playing well, and so I'm using this opportunity to slowly let them go. And for quite honestly, I'm taking a loss on these, and that's okay. That is okay. It is unfortunate how much I paid for them versus what they're worth now, but it's more important for me to get my money out now rather than like hoping on to the false hope that they're going to go back to the regular prices. So that's just like a general overall statement. You have to be very objective about this kind of stuff. And so that's essentially the video. I would love to hear your comments and know your comments about what I've said here about these investment cards, your thoughts on them, and if you think my theory holds true. And next time on the channel, we're going to continue this discussion again, because we're going to talk about which cards I think will go down further and which ones have, I think, reached their bottom or are close to the bottom. And well, based off of this video, you can probably guess which ones I think will go down further. So thank you as always for listening and watching, and I will talk to you all soon. Cheers.